My life, up until that Tuesday, could have been described in shades of beige. I was 26 years old, and my world was confined to the glowing rectangle of my monitor, the quiet hum of my computer's fan, and the predictable comfort of my small apartment. I worked from home as a programmer, a job I was good at precisely because it required minimal human interaction and a maximum amount of logical, structured thinking. My social life was a ghost town, populated only by my younger sister, Maya. She was the color in my grayscale existence, vibrant, loud, and relentlessly determined to drag me out of my shell. That morning, she burst into my apartment without knocking, a whirlwind of bright yellow sundress and the scent of citrusy perfume. "Josh, get up. We're going to be late." I squinted at her from my throne, a worn-out office chair that had molded perfectly to my spine over thousands of hours of coding. On the screen in front of me, lines of Python snaked their way down the display. Late for what? I don't have anything scheduled except for debugging this new module. "Late for our appointment," she said, pulling the cord of my headphones from its jack. The sudden silence was jarring. "I told you about this last week." I genuinely had no memory of it. Maya was always telling me about things, yoga classes, blind dates, farmers markets that I would politely nod to before promptly deleting them from my mental cache. "What appointment?" "Beauty appointment," she chirped, her smile so bright it was almost aggressive. "I have a wax, and I figured you could use a little tidying up." She gestured vaguely at my face. I reflexively touched my eyebrows. They were present, functional. They kept sweat out of my eyes. What more did they need to do? "You're kidding, right, Maya? I'm not getting my eyebrows waxed." The very idea felt absurd, like asking a cat to file its own taxes. It was a category error. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. It's not a big deal. Just a little cleanup. And your upper lip. You're getting that shadow thing." "That's called a mustache, Maya, or the beginning of one. Men have them." "Well, it's not a very convincing one," she shot back, her hands on her hips. "Look, I already booked it. It's a package deal. Please, for me, I don't want to go alone." That was her trump card, and she knew it. The "for me" coupled with the pleading, wide-eyed look. I had been caving to that look since she was 6 years old and wanted the last cookie. I sighed, the sound a gust of defeat. "Fine, but I'm not enjoying it." "You're never required to enjoy things I make you do," she said, grabbing my arm and pulling me out of the chair. "Just to do them." The salon was exactly as I'd imagined, overwhelmingly white, sterile, and smelling sharply of acetone and something vaguely floral. Soft, ambient music drifted from hidden speakers, a stark contrast to the heavy metal I usually coded to. Women in stylish outfits sat in plush chairs, their fingers and toes being attended to by focused technicians. I felt like a lumberjack at a tea party, oversized, out of place, and clad in a faded hoodie and jeans that suddenly felt grubby. Maya checked in at the front desk, her voice confident and easy. "Hi, we have a 2 o'clock appointment for Maya and Joshua Collins." The receptionist, a woman with impossibly perfect eyebrows, smiled at me. It felt less like a welcome and more like an assessment. Of course, Amber will be right with you. I just wanted to disappear into the floor. Every person who glanced my way made my skin prickle. They knew I didn't belong here. I was an intruder in this temple of femininity. A woman in a neat, gray uniform appeared. "Joshua?" Maya gave me a little shove. "That's you. Go on." I followed Amber down a hallway into a small, private room. It was dominated by a reclining chair that looked like a cross between a dentist's chair and a spaceship command seat. There were jars of mysterious creams, sterile-looking metal tools, and a pot of what I assumed was the wax, glowing with a warm, honey-colored light. "Have a seat," Amber said, her voice calm and professional. "So, just a brow and lip wax today." "I guess," I mumbled, sinking into the chair. It was surprisingly comfortable. My sister sort of volunteered me. She chuckled. "We get a lot of that. Don't worry. It's not as bad as people think. I'll be quick." She tilted my head back, and the bright, circular light above glared down at me. I closed my eyes. I heard the clink of a small wooden stick against the side of the pot. Then I felt it, a sudden, spreading warmth above my eye. The wax was thick and sticky, and she expertly smoothed it over my unruly brow hairs. The sensation was foreign, but not entirely unpleasant. It was just warm. "Okay, deep breath," she said. I didn't have time. There was a quick press, a sharp, tearing sensation, and my eyes flew open, watering instantly. It was an agonizing pain, more like a high-intensity, static shock that lasted for a millisecond. "See, all done on that side," Amber said cheerfully, pressing her fingers firmly against the now bare skin. The pressure was soothing. She repeated the process on the other eyebrow, then in the space between them. With each pull, I flinched a little less. Finally, she moved to my upper lip. The skin there felt more sensitive, and the rip of the wax strip was sharper, leaving a tingling heat in its wake. "And we are done," she announced, her voice full of finality. She dabbed a cool, soothing oil over the pinkened areas. "You can sit up." I did, slowly, feeling a strange mix of relief and trepidation. I hadn't dared to look yet. Amber handed me a small, silver mirror. "What do you think?" she asked. I lifted the mirror, my heart doing a nervous little flutter. I fully expected to see a red, blotchy mess, a face that looked even more awkward than usual, but that's not what I saw. My face was still my face, but it was different, clearer. The removal of the stray hairs had created a clean, deliberate arch in my eyebrows that I never knew was possible. They framed my eyes, making them seem larger, more defined. The skin on my upper lip was smooth, and without that faint shadow. The shape of my mouth seemed softer. The lines of my face felt less cluttered, more elegant. It was like looking at a photograph that had been brought into sharp focus for the first time. The raw data of my face was the same, but the presentation had been completely refined. "You've got an amazing bone structure," Amber said, her voice pulling me from my trance. She was looking at my reflection in the larger mirror on the wall. "High cheekbones, a good jawline, With the right makeup, you could model easily. I let out a short, awkward laugh. Right, me, a model. The idea was ludicrous. I was a programmer who considered putting on a clean shirt to be dressing up. But as I continued to stare, her words echoed in my head. I tilted my face from side to side for the first time in my life. I wasn't just looking at my face to see if there was something stuck in my teeth. I was studying it. I saw the gentle curve of my cheek, the way my eyelashes were surprisingly long, the smooth plane of my forehead. There was a strange, subtle femininity to the image in the mirror, a softness that had always been there, buried under a layer of neglect and masculine expectation. And it wasn't ugly. It wasn't weird. It was kind of beautiful. My heart gave a quiet, powerful thud. It wasn't a romantic flutter. It was a beat of recognition, a deep, resonant chime that vibrated through my entire body. When I met Maya in the lobby, she took one look at me and her jaw dropped. "Whoa, Josh, you clean up really well." "It's just my eyebrows," I said, my voice coming out quieter than I intended. I couldn't meet her eyes, my gaze fixed on my own reflection in the polished surface of a display case. "No, it's not just your eyebrows," she insisted, walking around me as if I were a sculpture in a museum. "It's your whole face. It looks gentler, softer." She was right. That was the word, softer. On the drive home, she chattered away about her own appointment, about the latest drama at her office. But I barely heard her. I kept glancing at myself in the rear view mirror, at the stranger with my eyes who was looking back. "See," she said, catching my gaze in the mirror and smiling. "Told you. You look too pretty to waste it." I just smiled back, a small, uncertain curve of my lips. But the word echoed. Pretty. No one had ever called me pretty before. Handsome. Maybe, on a good day, by a well-meaning aunt. But pretty. That was a word from a different language, a different world, a world I was suddenly, terrifyingly curious about. That night, long after Maya had gone home, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, the harsh fluorescent light buzzing overhead. I leaned in close, examining the clean lines, the smooth skin. The pinkness from the wax had faded, leaving behind a version of me I didn't know. The face, staring back, wasn't just Joshua Collins, the quiet programmer. It was a canvas, and for the first time in my 26 years, I felt an overwhelming urge to pick up a brush. The reflection didn't feel like a man's face anymore. It felt like a question, and the answer was waiting just out of sight. Sleep wouldn't come. I tossed and turned for hours, the sheets tangling around my legs like anxious vines. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that face from the mirror, the softer, clearer version of myself. It wasn't a fleeting image, it was a persistent echo, a hum beneath the surface of my thoughts that I couldn't ignore. My mind, usually a neat and orderly place filled with code and logic, was in chaos. It was a jumble of feelings I couldn't parse: curiosity, fear, and a strange, thrilling excitement that felt like standing on the edge of a very high cliff. At around 2 in the morning, I gave up on sleep. I sat up in bed, the moonlight casting long shadows across my room. My apartment, usually a comfortable sanctuary, felt like a cage. I was restless, filled with a nervous energy that demanded an outlet. My gaze fell on the guest room, the one Maya used when she stayed over. She'd left a small duffel bag there from her last visit, and I knew she always kept a makeup bag inside it for emergencies. The thought slid into my mind, unbidden and sharp. What if? My heart started beating faster, a frantic rhythm against my ribs. This was crazy. It was a stupid, impulsive idea. I was a guy, a normal, boring, introverted guy. What was I even thinking? I tried to push the thought away, to bury it under a mountain of rationalizations, but it was no use. The curiosity was a physical thing, an itch under my skin that I had to scratch, moving like a thief in my own home. I slipped out of bed and padded silently down the short hallway. The guest room door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, the hinges letting out a faint, accusatory creak. The duffel bag was on the chair in the corner, kneeling on the floor. My hands trembling slightly, I unzipped it, and there it was, a small, sequined bag. It felt impossibly foreign in my hands. I took it back to my bathroom, closing the door with a soft click that sounded like a gavel falling. I locked it, a completely unnecessary act since I lived alone, but it felt crucial, as if I were sealing myself off from the world I knew. I unzipped the makeup bag and emptied its contents onto the counter. It was an arsenal of mysterious objects, tubes and compacts, brushes of all shapes and sizes, pencils, and strange, sponge-like things. The air filled with a faint, powdery, floral scent. It smelled like Maya, like every hug she'd ever given me. Touching these items felt like crossing a line, like reading someone's diary. It was an intimate, forbidden act. My hands hovered over the collection, unsure where to even begin. I picked up a bottle of what the label called liquid foundation. I squeezed a small amount onto my fingertips. It was cool and smooth. Hesitantly, I started dabbing it onto my face, trying to mimic the way I'd seen women do it in movies. I blended it in, my motions clumsy and unsure, but as I worked it over my skin, I watched in the mirror as my faint stubble shadow softened. The slight unevenness in my skin tone vanished, and my face became a smooth, uniform canvas. The effect was startling. Emboldened, I picked up a compact of blush. I found a soft brush and dusted a little onto my cheeks. Too much. I looked like a clown. I frantically tried to rub it off, smearing it instead. My panic rose. This was a mistake. I looked ridiculous. But then I took a damp washcloth and gently wiped at the apples of my cheeks, softening the color until it was just a faint, healthy-looking flush. It warmed up my face, giving it a life that wasn't there before. Next, I found an eyeliner pencil. This was the hardest part. My hand was shaky, and the line I drew was wobbly and thick. It looked less like a graceful sweep and more like I'd been in a fight with a Sharpie. But I didn't give up. I cleaned it off and tried again and again. On the fourth try, I managed a thin, shaky line along my upper lashes. It wasn't perfect, but it made my eyes look different, deeper, more intense. The final piece was lipstick. It was a deep, velvety red, housed in a sleek black tube that felt heavy and cool in my hand. I twisted it open and carefully applied the color to my lips. The sensation was slick and waxy. The color was dramatic, a slash of brilliance against the pale canvas of my face. I put the tube down and leaned back, my hands gripping the edge of the counter. I stared at the reflection. My breath caught in my throat. The person looking back at me was not Joshua Collins. It couldn't be. Joshua was all sharp angles and muted tones. This person was soft curves and vibrant color. The face was familiar. The underlying bone structure was mine. But the overall effect was utterly transformative. The makeup hadn't created a mask. It felt more like it had unveiled something that was hiding beneath the surface. The eyes staring back at me were wide, curious, and a little scared. They belonged to a woman. A wave of vertigo washed over me. This was more than just an experiment. This felt significant. The feeling propelled me forward. It wasn't enough. I needed to see the whole picture. I crept back into the guest room and, feeling even more like a trespasser, I opened the small closet where Maya kept a few spare outfits. My fingers brushed past a pair of jeans, a sweatshirt, and then something else, something smooth and cool. I pulled it out. It was a simple, black slip dress, made of a fabric that felt like liquid silk. It was probably something she wore to sleep in, but to me, it looked like the most elegant garment ever created. Back in my room, I stripped off my t-shirt and boxers. My body felt clumsy and wrong, a collection of awkward angles. But I took the dress and, holding my breath, I pulled it over my head. The silk cascaded down my body, a cool, weightless caress against my skin. It clung to my frame in a way my own clothes never did. My loose hoodies and baggy jeans were designed to hide my body, to make it disappear. This dress did the opposite. It outlined the gentle slope of my shoulders, the slimness of my waist, the curve of my hips that I never knew I had. I turned to face the full-length mirror on my closet door, and I froze. The man was gone. In his place stood a woman, a tall, slender woman with big, dark, questioning eyes, flushed cheeks, and bold, red lips. Her shoulders, which I'd always seen as narrow for a man, looked delicate and graceful. The soft light from my bedside lamp caught the sheen of the silk, making it look like I was draped in shadow and moonlight. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. And it was me. A name surfaced in my mind, bubbling up from some deep, forgotten well. It wasn't a conscious thought. It felt more like a memory I didn't know I had. Daniela. I whispered it out loud, my voice a raw, unused thing. Daniela. The name fit the reflection perfectly. It sounded right. It felt right. A slow, trembling smile spread across Daniela's red lips, and in the mirror, I smiled back, for the first time. A smile didn't feel like a forced gesture. It felt genuine. It felt like breathing after being underwater for a very long time. This feeling, it wasn't wrong. It wasn't shameful or sick or any of the things I thought it would be. It was the opposite. It felt like coming home. It felt like every disjointed piece of myself, the shyness, the desire to be invisible, the strange detachment from my own body had suddenly clicked into place and formed a coherent, beautiful whole. I wasn't Joshua hiding from the world. I was Daniela, looking at it for the first time. I stayed like that for what felt like hours, just looking, turning, watching the silk swirl around my legs, touching my face, feeling the smooth skin, the soft blush. It was a revelation. Eventually, the first hints of dawn began to streak the sky, and a cold dread washed over me. I had to undo it all. I had to become Joshua again. The process of removing the makeup felt like a betrayal. With each wipe of the makeup remover pad, Daniela faded. The smooth skin became blotchy again. The vibrant lips became pale. The deep, mysterious eyes became my own tired, sad ones. I took off the dress, its silk whispering against my skin one last time, and put on my old, familiar clothes. They felt like a straitjacket. I looked in the mirror one last time before cleaning up the evidence. Joshua was back, looking tired and pale and utterly miserable. The magic was gone. I sat down at my desk, but instead of opening my laptop, I opened a blank notebook. I needed to write it down, to prove to myself that it had been real. My hand shook as I wrote. I met someone tonight. She was in my mirror. Her name is Daniela. I paused, then added one more line, the ink bleeding slightly from a fallen tear. It didn't feel wrong. It felt like me. The morning after was a brutal re-entry into reality. I felt hungover, though I hadn't had a drop of alcohol. My body ached with a strange combination of exhaustion and a lingering thrum of adrenaline. I had managed to clean up most of the evidence, scrubbing the last traces of mascara from under my eyes and hiding Maya's makeup bag back in her duffel. But I couldn't erase the feeling, the memory of Daniela in the mirror. She was a ghost in the room with me, a silent observer watching as I slumped back into the drab costume of Joshua. I was sitting at my computer, staring blankly at the same lines of code from yesterday, when a sharp knock echoed through the apartment. It was Maya. Of course, it was Maya. My heart leaped into my throat. Had I missed something? A lipstick smear on a towel, a stray bobby pin? "Josh, you in there," she called, her voice muffled by the door. Before I could answer, I heard the familiar jingle of her keys as she let herself in. I quickly tried to compose myself, to arrange my face into its usual mask of detached neutrality. But my eyes were red-rimmed and puffy from lack of sleep and the quiet, confused tears I'd shed before dawn. She walked into my office area, a paper cup of coffee in each hand. "Brought you a latte. You look like you need it." She stopped short when she saw my face. Her cheerful demeanor evaporated, replaced by a look of concern. "Whoa, are you okay? You look awful." "Just didn't sleep well," I mumbled, taking the coffee from her and hoping she wouldn't press the issue. But Maya wasn't one to let things go. Her eyes scanned the room, then my desk. They lingered for a fraction of a second on the corner of my desk blotter, where a tiny, almost invisible red smudge marred the surface, a lipstick smear I had missed. Her gaze flicked back to my face. and a strange expression crossed hers, not anger or confusion, but something like dawning comprehension. It was a look of pieces clicking into place. She didn't say anything about the smudge. Instead, she pulled up the spare chair and sat down, her movements slow and deliberate, the silence stretched, thick with unspoken questions. I braced myself for the interrogation, for the teasing, for the judgment. It never came. "Josh," she said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "You didn't have to hide it." I froze, the coffee cup halfway to my lips. "Hide what? I don't know what you're talking about." My denial was weak, pathetic. She reached out and gently placed her hand over mine on the desk. Her touch was warm and steady. "Last night, I have a hunch. You know, I've always felt like something was off, not in a bad way," she added quickly, "just not quite right. The way you'd avoid looking in mirrors, the way you never dated, never even seemed interested, the way you always seemed so uncomfortable in your own skin, like you were wearing a suit that was 2 sizes too small." I couldn't speak. My throat was tight with a knot of unshed tears. She knew. Somehow, she knew. "When I saw you yesterday, after the salon, it was the first time I ever saw you look at your own reflection and not immediately look away," she continued, her voice a gentle murmur. "You looked right. You looked more at peace in that moment than I've seen you in 20 years. A single tear escaped and traced a hot path down my cheek. I tried to wipe it away, but it was followed by another, and then another. The dam I had built around my emotions for my entire life finally broke, and I dropped my head into my free hand, my shoulders shaking with silent, ragged sobs. It was all too much, the confusion, the fear, the strange, profound joy of the night before, and now this unexpected, unconditional acceptance. Maya didn't say anything. She just squeezed my hand, letting me cry it out. When my sobs finally subsided into shuddering breaths, she spoke again. "It's okay," she whispered. "Whatever it is, it's okay." That evening, the atmosphere between us was different. It was lighter, more honest. The secret was out, even if neither of us had given it a name yet. We ordered pizza and sat on the floor of my living room, talking more openly than we ever had. I told her everything about the sleepless night, the makeup, the black silk dress. I told her about the name that had appeared in my head. I told her about Daniela. She listened without a single flicker of judgment, her expression one of deep, empathetic understanding. When I finished, my voice hoarse, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, a genuine, brilliant smile. "Well," she said, her tone practical, "if Daniela is going to be a part of our lives, she needs a better wardrobe than my old sleep dress." My head snapped up. "What?" "Tonight," she announced, getting to her feet and pulling me up with her. "We're going out. Just for a little bit. To a store. Just to try things on. No pressure. Just an experiment." An hour later, I found myself standing under the fluorescent lights of a department store. It was late, and the place was mostly empty, which was a small mercy. I felt like every security camera was trained on me, But Maya was a calming presence, a shield. She led me through the men's section first, a clever strategic move. "Okay, let's start small," she said, pulling a pair of dark, slim-fit jeans from a rack. "These are basically unisex. And this sweater, too." I tried them on. They were tighter than my usual clothes, more form-fitting. They hinted at the shape of my body instead of hiding it. It was a small step, but it felt significant. I looked in the mirror and saw an androgynous version of Joshua. It was a start. But Maya wasn't done. "Okay," she said, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Phase 2." She led me, my heart pounding a nervous drumbeat, into the women's section. The sheer volume of colors, fabrics, and styles was dizzying. I felt a surge of panic, the old desire to be invisible flaring up. I was an imposter here. Maya ignored my discomfort, her focus absolute. Her eyes scanned the racks until she stopped at a display of dresses. She sifted through them, her fingers expertly judging the fabrics. Then she pulled one out. It was a simple, wrap-style dress in a deep forest green. The material was a soft, flowing jersey knit that looked like it would be incredibly comfortable. "This one," she said, holding it up against me. "The color will be amazing with your eyes." I shook my head, taking a step back. "Maya, I can't. I can't try that on. Not here." "Yes, you can," she said, her voice firm but kind. She pushed the dress into my hands. "The fitting rooms are right there. No one is watching. Just go. For me." Her trump card again. Defeated. I took the dress and walked on trembling legs to the fitting rooms. Inside the small cubicle, I leaned against the door, the soft fabric of the dress clutched in my hand. This felt infinitely more real and terrifying than trying on her dress in the safety of my own apartment. This was out in the world. It took me a few minutes to work up the nerve. I took off the new jeans and sweater and, with a deep breath, I pulled the green dress over my head. The fabric was as soft as I'd imagined, cool against my skin. I fumbled with the wrap tie, my fingers feeling clumsy and thick. Finally, I got it tied at the waist. I stood there for a moment, with my eyes closed, just feeling the sensation of the skirt draping around my legs. Then I opened my eyes and looked in the mirror, and I forgot to breathe. The person staring back at me was Daniela, not a blurry, late-night experiment, but a clear, fully realized vision. The green of the dress did, as Maya predicted, make my eyes seem brighter. The cut of the dress cinched at my waist and flowed over my hips, creating a gentle, feminine silhouette. My hair was a mess, and I had no makeup on, but it didn't matter. The essence of her was there. She looked soft and gentle, and so incredibly right. A hesitant smile touched her lips, my lips. Maya's voice from outside the door. "Josh, everything okay in there?" I took another deep breath, my hand resting on the curtain. "Yeah," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I'm okay." "Can I see?" I hesitated for only a second. Then I pulled back the curtain. Maya was leaning against the opposite wall, scrolling on her phone. She looked up, and the phone nearly slipped from her hand. Her mouth fell open slightly, and her eyes went wide. She didn't say anything. She just stared. The silence was deafening. I felt a blush creep up my neck, my self-consciousness returning in a rush. "It's stupid, I know," I started to say, ready to retreat back into the safety of the fitting room. "No!" she breathed, cutting me off. She pushed herself off the wall and took a step closer. "It's not stupid." She reached out and touched the sleeve of the dress, as if to confirm it was real. "Josh, you're beautiful." And then, looking at our reflections in the large three-way mirror, Daniela started to laugh. It wasn't Joshua's awkward, breathy chuckle. It was a new sound, clear and light and full of a joy so pure it was breathtaking. For the first time, the sound that came out of my mouth felt like my own. And in the mirror, my sister smiled back at me, her eyes shining with tears. The green dress was a beginning. We bought it, smuggling it out of the store in a discreet shopping bag that felt like it contained a priceless, stolen artifact. Back at my apartment, it became a symbol, a tangible piece of this new reality. The days that followed were a whirlwind of quiet, radical transformation, all taking place within the four walls of my home, my apartment. Once just a place to work and sleep, became a laboratory and a sanctuary. Maya was my co-conspirator, my coach, and my unwavering cheerleader. The journey to becoming Daniela was not a single, magical event. It was a slow, painstaking process of learning a new language, a language of the body, the voice, and the self. We started with the voice. My default register was a low, monotone mumble, a product of years of shyness and minimal use. Maya found videos online, tutorials from vocal coaches for transgender women. We spent hours doing ridiculous sounding exercises, humming and sliding up and down scales until my throat was sore. I learned about resonance, about speaking from the mask of my face instead of the rumble in my chest. "Think lighter thoughts," Maya would say, in all seriousness. "Happy thoughts. Your voice will follow." It sounded like nonsense, but I tried. I'd practice reading articles aloud, trying to inject a softer, more melodic quality into the words. Most of the time, I sounded like a caricature, a man doing a bad impression of a woman. The frustration was immense. There were evenings I wanted to give up, convinced my vocal cords were permanently locked into a masculine prison. But then there were moments, fleeting at first, where I would say a phrase and a new sound would emerge, a higher, gentler tone that sounded right. It was faint, a whisper of Daniela's potential voice, but it was enough to keep me going. Movement was the next frontier. I had the gait of a programmer, a head down, shoulders slumped, shuffle. Maya made me walk back and forth across my living room, a book balanced on my head. Shoulders back, chin up, she'd command. And stop taking up so much space. Men walk like they own the world. Women walk like they're navigating it. Smaller steps. Let your hips move. It felt ridiculous, like I was learning to walk all over again at 26. We moved on to sitting. I had a tendency to manspread, to sit with my knees wide apart. Maya would constantly tap my knee, legs together or crossed, always. I learned how to gesture with my hands, not in broad, clumsy motions, but with a quieter, more deliberate grace. How to hold a coffee mug, how to laugh without booming, how to smile with my eyes. Each tiny adjustment was a thread in the tapestry of Daniela. Then came the world of makeup and hair. My first solo attempt had been a clumsy mess. Under Maya's tutelage, it became an art form. We watched hours of online tutorials, our heads bent together over her laptop. I learned the difference between foundation, concealer, and primer. I learned how to blend eyeshadow, how to create the perfect winged eyeliner after about 100 failed, smudgy attempts, and how to choose a lipstick shade that complemented my skin tone. The process was meditative. The feeling of the soft brushes on my skin, the careful application of color, the slow transformation in the mirror, it was a daily ritual of creation. I was painting Daniela into existence. The biggest step was the wig. Maya insisted. Hair is everything, she said. We spent an entire afternoon at a specialty wig shop in a different part of town. The embarrassment I felt walking in was quickly overshadowed by awe. There were hundreds of them, in every color and style imaginable. The shop owner, a kind older woman, didn't bat an eye. She simply asked, "What are we looking for today, honey?" Maya described what she thought would work: something dark, shoulder length, with soft waves. The owner brought out a few options. I tried on the first one, a sleek black bob. It looked wrong, like a helmet. But then I tried on the second one. It was a rich, chocolate brown, with layers that fell just past my shoulders. The moment she settled it on my head, the world shifted. Long hair changed the entire geometry of my face. It softened my jawline, framed my eyes, and created a sense of movement and life around my head. I instinctively reached up and ran my fingers through the synthetic strands. The feeling of it brushing against my cheek, against my neck, was electrifying. In the mirror, Daniela stared back at me, and this time she looked complete. With each external change, I felt a corresponding internal shift. The more I looked like Daniela, the more I felt like her. I started a private journal, and without consciously thinking about it, I found myself writing from her perspective, using she and her pronouns. Joshua began to feel less like me and more like a role I had been playing for a long time, a suit of armor I was finally learning to take off. My skin, thanks to a new skincare routine Maya forced on me, grew softer. My posture improved. I was physically and mentally unfurling. After weeks of this private rehearsal, Maya decided it was time for a dress rehearsal, a real one. "We're going out," she announced one evening, "just for dinner, someplace quiet, low-key, a little bistro I know downtown." Terror and excitement warred within me, going out in the world as Daniela. It felt like attempting a spacewalk with a faulty oxygen tank. I don't know. Maya, what if someone recognizes me? What if people stare? What if they laugh? "They won't," she said with unshakable confidence. "You're ready. Daniela is ready." It took us 2 hours to prepare. I showered and meticulously shaved every inch of my face and body until my skin was perfectly smooth. I did my makeup with the focus of a surgeon, my hands surprisingly steady. I put on the green dress, it felt like an old friend now. And finally, Maya helped me with the wig, brushing it out and making sure it sat perfectly. When I looked in the mirror, I felt a sense of calm settle over me. The woman looking back was nervous, yes, but she was also poised and beautiful. She was real. The drive downtown was agonizing. I was convinced every driver in every car we passed was staring at me. Knowing my secret, my hands were clammy, and my heart was doing a frantic tap dance against my ribs. The bistro was small and dimly lit, full of the quiet clinking of silverware and murmured conversations. It was perfect. A host greeted us at the door. "Table for two?" he asked, his eyes glancing from Maya to me without a hint of suspicion. "Yes, please," Maya said smoothly. He led us to a small table in a quiet corner. As I walked, I was intensely aware of my every movement, my steps, my posture, the sway of the dress. It felt like walking on a tightrope. I slid into the booth, my knees pressed firmly together. A server, a young woman with a friendly smile, came over to our table. "Good evening. Ladies, can I get you started with something to drink?" Ladies. The word hit me with the force of a physical blow. It was such a simple, mundane word, a throwaway greeting she probably said 100 times a night. But for me, it was everything. It was the first time someone outside of my trusted circle, a complete stranger, had looked at me and seen a woman. They saw Daniela. The validation was so profound, so overwhelming, that it brought tears to my eyes. I blinked them back furiously, looking down at my menu as a wave of warmth spread through my chest, a feeling of pure, unadulterated joy. I glanced up at Maya, and she was watching me, a knowing, gentle smile on her face. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "See," she whispered, "you're home." And she was right, for the first time in my life, sitting there in a stranger's restaurant, wearing a dress and a wig, I felt completely and utterly at home in my own skin. The success of our dinner outing was a turning point. It proved that Daniela could exist outside the safe confines of my apartment. She could navigate the world, and the world, for the most part, would accept her. This realization was both liberating and terrifying. The more time I spent as Daniela, the more I wanted to be Daniela. The moments when I had to wash off the makeup and put on Joshua's clothes started to feel like a profound loss. A return to a prison I hadn't even known I was in. The line between the two identities was blurring, and Joshua was fading into the background. A few weeks later, Maya suggested we go to a coffee shop in a neighborhood we rarely frequented. "It's got this great, chill vibe," she said, "and a friend of mine from college, Ethan, works there sometimes. He's a good guy. I think you'd like him." The casual mention of her friend sent a jolt of anxiety through me. Meeting a stranger was one thing. Meeting someone Maya actually knew was another level of risk. But the part of me that was Daniela, the part that was growing bolder every day, was also intrigued. The coffee shop was just as she described, warm, filled with the rich aroma of roasted coffee beans, the soft sounds of an indie folk playlist, and the quiet murmur of people reading and talking. I was wearing a simple, but elegant outfit Maya had helped me pick out: dark, high-waisted jeans that flattered my figure, a soft, cream-colored cashmere sweater, and a pair of low-heeled ankle boots that gave me a little height without being difficult to walk in. My makeup was subtle, my hair was styled in loose waves, and for the first time I walked into a public place feeling not just passable, but confident. We ordered our drinks, and as we waited, Maya scanned the room. "Oh, good, he's here," she said, nodding toward the counter. I followed her gaze. Behind the counter, organizing a shelf of mugs, was a young man with kind, dark eyes and a gentle, unassuming air. He had a slight 5 o'clock shadow and brown hair that flopped over his forehead in a way that looked effortlessly charming. He wasn't classically handsome in a movie star way, but there was a quiet warmth and sincerity about him that was immediately appealing. That was Ethan. Ethan, Maya called out. He turned, and a slow, easy smile spread across his face when he saw her. "Maya. Hey, I didn't know you were coming by." He wiped his hands on his apron and came around the counter to give her a quick, friendly hug. His eyes then fell on me, and his smile became a little more reserved, a little shy. "Hi," he said, his voice soft. "Ethan, this is my friend, Daniela," Maya said, her voice smooth as silk. "Daniela, this is Ethan." "It's really nice to meet you," he said, his eyes meeting mine directly. There was no flicker of confusion, no hint of suspicion. He just saw me. "Daniela." My heart did a little flip-flop. "You too," I managed to say, my voice coming out in the higher, softer register I'd been practicing. It sounded natural, even to my own ears. "Your coffee will be just a minute," he said to us, before excusing himself to help another customer. We took a small table by the window. I couldn't stop myself from sneaking glances at him as he worked. There was a quiet competence in his movements, a gentle way he interacted with customers. He seemed like a genuinely nice person, and that, more than anything, made me nervous. A few minutes later, he brought our drinks over himself, one latte for Maya, and one chai for Daniela, he said, setting the mugs down carefully. "It's a little slow right now, so my boss won't mind if I take my break." He gestured to the empty chair at our table. "Do you mind if I join you for a bit?" "Of course not," Maya said quickly, maybe a little too quickly. He sat down, and for the first few minutes, he and Maya caught up on old college friends and inside jokes. I was happy to stay quiet, to just observe. But then, Ethan turned his attention to me. "So, Daniela, Maya tells me you're a programmer," he asked. I was momentarily stunned. Maya had prepped me with a backstory, a carefully edited version of my life. Daniela was a freelance web designer, a plausible, gender-neutral enough profession. I'd forgotten she'd shared that detail. "Oh, yes," I said. "Mostly front-end development. I work from home, so it's nice to get out to places like this." "That's cool," he said, his interest seeming genuine. "I've always been fascinated by coding. It seems like learning a whole new language. I'm more of an analog guy myself. I paint." "Really?" I asked, my own interest piqued. "What kind of stuff?" And just like that, we were talking. The conversation flowed more easily than any conversation I'd ever had with a stranger. We talked about art and technology, about our favorite books and movies, about the simple joy of finding a good coffee shop. He was easy to talk to, a good listener, thoughtful in his responses. He never dominated the conversation, always asking questions and genuinely seeming to care about my answers. Maya mostly sat back, watching us with a small, knowing smile. At one point, I was telling a story about a particularly frustrating coding bug, and I made a joke. Ethan laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "You have such a natural charm," he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "It's really nice." His compliment landed directly in the center of my chest. A warm, spreading bloom. He wasn't complimenting my appearance, which I always feared was a fragile illusion. He was complimenting me, my personality, my sense of humor. He was complimenting Daniela. My cheeks flushed, and I had to look down at my mug, a shy smile playing on my lips. It was the most wonderful and most terrifying feeling in the world. When his break was over, he stood up reluctantly. "Well, I should probably get back to it, but it was really, really great to meet you, Daniela." "You too, Ethan," I said, and I meant it. As we left the coffee shop and walked out into the cool afternoon air, I felt dazed, like I was floating a few inches off the ground. That night, curled up on my sofa, I confessed to Maya. "He was so nice," I said, hugging a pillow to my chest, and when he looked at me, I didn't feel like a fraud. I didn't feel guilty for the first time with someone who wasn't you. I felt seen." A shadow crossed my face. "But that's the problem, isn't it? He wasn't seeing me. He was seeing Daniela. He was seeing this creation." "Is she a creation?" Maya asked gently. "Or is she just you, the you that's been hiding all this time?" Her question hung in the air. I didn't have an answer. The conflict was tearing me apart. The joy of being seen as Daniela was inextricably tangled with the fear of being discovered as Joshua. My interactions with Ethan had brought the issue into sharp focus. I liked him. I liked the way he looked at Daniela, and that made the lie, or what felt like a lie, unbearable. I didn't want Daniela to be a part-time identity anymore, a costume I put on to go out. I wanted her to be real. I didn't want to go back to being Joshua at all. The thought, once terrifying, now felt like a simple, undeniable truth. I wanted to be her, always. And that meant the risk of someone finding out the truth was no longer just a possibility. It was an inevitability I would have to face. The next couple of weeks were a strange mix of euphoria and simmering dread. Maya and I made a few more trips to the coffee shop, and each time, by a stroke of luck or perhaps Maya's subtle planning, Ethan was there. Our conversations picked up right where they left off, growing more comfortable and familiar with each visit. I learned that his favorite color was the deep blue of the sky just after sunset, that he was terrified of spiders, and that he painted not for recognition, but because it was the only way he knew how to make sense of the world. He learned that I was a night owl, that I had a secret love for cheesy 80s sci-fi movies, and that I could be surprisingly funny once I felt comfortable. I was falling for him, It was a gentle, terrifying descent. I was falling for him as Daniela, and the higher I soared in her skin, the longer the drop felt back to the reality of Joshua. Every compliment he gave her, every warm smile, felt like both a gift and a ticking time bomb. How could I ever build something real on a foundation that felt like a lie? The breaking point came on a rainy Saturday afternoon. Maya had come over to help me try out a new, more advanced makeup technique, contouring. We were spread out on my living room floor, surrounded by brushes, palettes, and YouTube tutorials paused on her tablet. I was halfway through the process, my face a mosaic of light and dark creams that had yet to be blended. I was wearing my at-home Daniela uniform, a pair of soft leggings and an oversized, comfortable sweater. My wig was on, but it was slightly askew. We were laughing at my clumsy attempt to chisel out cheekbones when my apartment buzzer blared, making us both jump. I froze, my heart seizing in my chest. I never, ever had unexpected visitors. "Who could that be?" I whispered, my voice tight with panic. Maya went to the intercom. "Hello?" A voice crackled through the small speaker, a voice that was achingly, terrifyingly familiar. "Hey, Maya, it's Ethan. I was in the neighborhood, dropping off a painting and thought I'd stop by and say hi. Hope that's okay." My blood ran cold. "Ethan, here, now." Maya's eyes shot to mine, wide with panic. "Oh, hey, Ethan, uh, now's not a great time. Actually," she stammered into the intercom. "Oh, no worries," he said, his voice still cheerful. "I can just leave. Just wanted to say hey." But before he could finish, another tenant came out of the building, and the lock on the main door buzzed open. "Oh, hey, someone let me in. I'll just come up for a second." There was no time. No time to run. No time to hide. No time to wash my face and tear off the wig. We were trapped. My mind went completely blank with sheer, unadulterated terror. This was it. The end. The moment of humiliation I had been dreading since the very first night I'd put on lipstick. "Josh, get in the bedroom," Maya hissed, shoving the makeup back into a bag. But it was too late. We heard footsteps in the hallway, and then a light, polite knock on my apartment door. Maya, looking pale, went to open it, trying to block the entryway with her body. "Hey, so sorry to just drop in," Ethan said. I was still sitting on the living room floor, frozen, like a deer in the headlights. From his vantage point at the door, through the gap behind Maya, he could see me. His eyes found mine. The friendly smile on his face faltered, replaced by a look of profound confusion. He saw me the half-done, streaky makeup, the crooked wig, the masculine frame in soft, feminine clothing. He saw the impossible contradiction. The air in the room became thick and heavy, charged with a silence so complete I could hear the blood pounding in my ears. My world narrowed to a single point, Ethan's face. I watched as his brow furrowed, his eyes scanning me from head to toe, the pieces of an impossible puzzle trying to click into place in his mind. I braced myself for the inevitable reaction, the flicker of disgust, the cruel smirk of ridicule, the hurried, awkward retreat. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. Daniela was gone. All that was left was a pathetic, ridiculous man in a dress. I squeezed my eyes shut, unable to bear the look on his face for another second. A choked sob escaped my lips. "I'm sorry," I whispered to the floor, the words tasting like ash. "I can explain." The sound of footsteps on the hardwood floor made me flinch. He was coming closer. I curled into myself, trying to make myself smaller, to disappear. Then his voice, when it came, was not loud or angry or mocking. It was quiet, soft, and full of a gentle bewilderment. "Daniela," he asked. Then, after a pause, he said a different name, a name I hadn't heard directed at me in weeks. "Joshua." My head snapped up. How did he know my name? He must have seen the question in my eyes. He gestured back toward Maya, who was standing by the door, her face a mask of misery. Maya's talked about her brother, Josh, before, the programmer. She showed me a picture once, from a family thing a few years ago. He took another slow step closer, his eyes never leaving mine. They weren't filled with hate, they were filled with something else, a deep, searching curiosity. He knelt down in front of me on the floor, so we were at eye level. The frantic panic in my chest began to subside, replaced by a profound, trembling vulnerability. He was quiet for a long moment, just looking at me, not at the makeup or the wig, but at me, at my eyes. "I knew something was different," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "There were times when we were talking, I'd see a flicker of something in your eyes, a sadness, a fear. I didn't understand it." He reached out, his hand hesitating for a moment before he gently, so gently, rested it on my arm. His touch was warm, steady. It wasn't a touch of pity. It was a touch of connection. I started to tremble, the tears I'd been holding back finally spilling over. "I'm so sorry," I cried. "I never meant to deceive you. I don't know what this is. I feel more like myself like this." Ethan's thumb began to stroke my arm in a slow, soothing rhythm. He didn't pull away. He didn't recoil. "Don't apologize," he said softly. "You don't have to hide it. Not from me." He looked from my tear-streaked face to Maya, who was watching us with tears in her own eyes, and then back to me. A small, sad smile touched his lips. "You know," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "all those times at the coffee shop, you seemed so bright, so alive. I've seen that picture of you as Joshua, and I've seen you now." He paused, his gaze incredibly earnest. "You look happier this way." He took a deep breath, and his next words shattered the last of my fear, leaving me utterly exposed and, for the first time, completely seen. "I like her better." That was it. That was the moment my world split in two, the life I had lived before, and the one that was just beginning. In that single, breathtaking instant, I realized that the person who was supposed to reject me, to expose me, had done the opposite. He had seen both sides of me, the shadow and the light, the man I was born as and the woman I was becoming. And he had chosen her. He had chosen me. The sobs that racked my body were no longer from a place of fear or shame. They were tears of relief, of a profound and soul-shaking gratitude so immense it was painful. I had spent my entire life hiding, and the first person to truly find me hadn't run away. He had stayed. 1 year, 365 days. It feels both like a lifetime and the blink of an eye. The rainy Saturday of Ethan's discovery wasn't an ending. It was the true beginning. The truth, once revealed, was not a catastrophe but a catalyst. It cleared the air, sweeping away the suffocating fear of discovery and leaving behind a space where something real and honest could finally grow. The year that followed was one of profound, intentional change. With the support of Maya and, unbelievably, Ethan, I stopped seeing Daniela as a persona and began the difficult, beautiful work of integrating her into every aspect of my life. She wasn't someone I became. She was simply who I was. My first step was finding a therapist, one who specialized in gender identity. Talking to a professional gave me the language and the framework to understand the feelings I'd been grappling with my whole life. The word transgender was scary at first. It felt too big, too clinical. But the more I said it, the more it felt right. It was a name for the homecoming I'd felt in my own skin. 6 months after Ethan's visit, I started hormone replacement therapy. The changes were subtle at first, a slow motion second puberty. My skin grew even softer, my body odor changed, and a small amount of fat began to redistribute, subtly softening the angles of my waist and hips. The most significant change was emotional. A lifelong fog of low-grade depression and detachment began to lift, replaced by a clarity and an emotional range I'd never known. I could cry from watching a sad movie, and I could feel joy so intensely it felt like sunshine under my skin. I was finally running on the right operating system. I started laser hair removal on my face, a painful, recurring tribute to the waxing appointment that had started it all, with each session, as the shadow of my old beard faded for good. I felt like I was reclaiming my own reflection. The biggest and most liberating change came when my own hair grew long enough. We had a small, celebratory ceremony where I retired my wig for good. Maya helped me style my own. Natural hair now a soft, shoulder-length bob. It was my hair. Growing from my head. It was real. My name is Daniela Collins now, legally. The day the court documents came in the mail, Maya and I drank champagne in the middle of the afternoon, and I cried with happiness. I am Daniela at work. My freelance clients never knew me as anyone else. I am Daniela at the grocery store. I am Daniela when I wake up in the morning and look in the mirror. There is no more Joshua. He wasn't a lie, but he was a ghost, a sketch of a person I was never meant to be. I think of him with a sort of gentle fondness now, a quiet pity for how long he had to carry a burden he didn't understand. Tonight is my birthday, or, as Maya calls it, my Daniela-versary. It marks 1 year since I truly started living. My small apartment is filled with the warm glow of fairy lights and the scent of the cake Maya baked. It's not a big party, just the three of us, my entire support system, my whole world. In one room, I'm wearing a dress made of deep purple satin that shimmers under the lights. It's elegant and simple, and it makes me feel beautiful. My makeup is applied with a confident, practiced hand. My hair is soft around my face. I catch a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror, and for a moment, I'm struck by the woman looking back. She is calm. Her eyes are bright, and she is smiling, a genuine, peaceful smile. There is no trace of the scared, anxious man who used to live here. The doorbell rings, and my heart gives a familiar, happy flutter. Maya lets Ethan in. He's holding a small bouquet of wildflowers, a beautiful, chaotic mix of blues, purples, and yellows. His eyes find mine across the room, and he breaks into that slow, warm smile that still makes my stomach do somersaults. Our relationship has unfolded as gently and naturally as everything else. We took it slow, building a foundation of friendship and trust before anything else. He loved Daniela before he ever knew Joshua, and he has been my most steadfast companion as I've bridged the gap between the two. He holds my hand during my hormone injections and tells me I'm beautiful even on days when my dysphoria makes me feel like a monster. He's in love not with an idea or an illusion, but with me. Happy birthday, Danny, he says, handing me the flowers. He leans in and kisses me softly, a gesture that feels as natural and necessary as breathing. Maya comes over, handing us both a glass of champagne. She beams at us, her eyes shining. You've come so far. Danny, she says, her voice thick with pride and affection. I'm so proud of you. I look from my sister, whose stubborn love cracked my shell open, to the man who saw all of me and wasn't afraid. My eyes well up with tears. But these are not the tears of confusion or fear I shed a year ago. They are tears of gratitude, so pure and overwhelming that they spill down my cheeks. Later, after cake and laughter, I find myself standing in front of the mirror again. It's a habit now, but a happy one. I'm no longer searching for someone I don't recognize. I'm just checking in with myself. The candlelight from the birthday cake flickers, casting a warm glow on my face. My skin is smooth. My eyes are bright. My smile is real. In the reflection, there is no ghost of Joshua. There is no question, no conflict. There is only Daniela Collins, the woman I was always meant to be, finally home.